Charlie Kirk's death has sparked a lot of conversation about the bitterly partisan and politically violent times we live in. Democrats are especially divided over how to respond. One view comes from the only elected Democrat who openly said President Biden should not run again in 2024 and in desperation challenged him in the primary. Former Minnesota Congressman Dean Phillips posted this message on X. Charlie Kirk's mission was to employ speech rather than bullets. To all fellow patriots on the right and left, let's unite by increasing our engagement with words while reducing carnage by weapons. It's the only way forward. Joining us live now to discuss the Kirk assassination, Kamala Harris's provocative new book, and the way forward is former Congressman and Democratic presidential candidate Dean Phillips. Congressman Phillips, thanks for your time.
Hey, it's great to be with you, Kristen,
nice to have
despite these dark days.
Very dark, very dark. And you know dark because you were there when the January 6th riots happened at the Capitol. So you've seen political violence firsthand. When you watch what's unfolding now, what goes through your head?
Well, a lot of sadness, not for any specific group in our country, but for all of us, Kristen, that, this notion that one side is responsible is so nonsensical. This is a time for leadership. It's a time for our better angels to rise. And when Charlie Kirk was assassinated a couple of days ago, I would argue that a part of our core American principles were also assassinated, and that is using words to litigate policy, not weapons. And this notion that somehow one side can win or one side's responsible, that, in my estimation, is the very problem. And until reasonable people on both sides of the aisle stand up and say enough is enough, start investing in young people, start recognizing that teenage young people should not have weapons of war in their hands, I don't think we're going to see progress. And I just would like to see the president, leaders in the House and Senate, for the first time in a long time, prioritize national unity, reconciliation, and cooperation, because it's their obligation, and the alternative is something none of us want to think about.
So do you really not think that perhaps one party or one side is more responsible than the other in terms of the heated rhetoric, perhaps, right? The taking up arms against fellow Americans they disagree with, because many of your fellow Democrats would probably disagree with that.
Yeah, but well, there are two ways to answer that question, and it's reasonable. There are entities on the far right and far left that somehow believe violence is a solution. There's no question that I think right-wing media has been more provocative, perhaps, certainly to Democrats over the last number of years. But I don't think that somehow excuses violent intentioned people on either side of the aisle, and that includes Democrats.
Do you blame
we have our own
media?
Challenges. I'm saying comprehensively. And by the way, part of the problem, I would argue right now, is that we have an angertainment. I'll say it again: the angertainment industry, coupled with social media algorithms that feed and feed and feed those with these pre-existing proclivities already. There's a real connection actually between the far-right MAGA group, if you will, and uber-left socialists. They're not as far apart as you might imagine. I think you'll see combinations of both in the man who looks like perpetrated the attack on Charlie Kirk. So my mission is this. It's not to celebrate one side or the other. It's not to condemn one side or the other. It's to acknowledge we got a real problem. And if we're going to litigate the past, we're going to lose. If we're going to shake hands, break bread, and hug each other, we can move forward. And I think Spencer Cox, the governor of Utah, is someone that we should be looking to as a potential national leader on the conservative side of the aisle, because he is leading with compassion and decency, which unfortunately has been absent from the White House.
All right. Well, look, you are now sought after and listened to for commentating. But 2 years ago, you were a pariah in your own party because you expressed as early as 2022 that President Biden shouldn't run again for a second term when few other Democrats would. Let's listen to a clip.
I called on the president to pass the torch. He didn't. I spent months literally calling other candidates who are much better known than I, because I know in this game you have to be well known. It helps the cause.
That's why I'm
the
wondering
invitation poppy is still Gretchen Whitmer, J.B. Pritzker, Gavin Newsom, Vice President Harris. Where are you? This isn't the practice of democracy that I really am trying to impress upon Democrats, that we should not have a coronation, we should have a competition.
Well, there wasn't a competition, but after Biden's disastrous debate with Trump, the chorus grew. Finally, Biden stepped down, replaced by Kamala Harris. And now this week, in excerpts from her new book coming out this month, 107 Days, the length of her campaign, the former VP breaks from her former boss and calls the Democratic leadership reckless for letting Biden make that huge decision to run again alone. And you call that the understatement of the century?
And I stand by those words. To condemn the leadership of the Democratic Party is like an arsonist running to the fire. I don't know who is higher, more privileged, more powerful in the Democratic Party than the president and vice president of the United States of America. It saddens me to be forthright, to see this book come out about that campaign. I have respect for her, but I think what transpired during the campaign, I think this book, but most of all, the unwillingness to call attention to the truth when the consequences were so grave is, to me, what disqualified her for leadership to begin with. And I think that's an absurdity, and that is part of the problem with the Democratic Party right now. Canceling those who might have a different opinion, ignoring those who are simply acknowledging reality, all because too many members of Congress, members of the administration, and elected officials around the country are so much more focused on their self-preservation rather than their principles. And that's why I think term limits and the notion of public service as a part of a professional career, but not the entirety, is something that would well serve America.
Okay, now this is going to get a little big, but you pointed to that your party maybe didn't always, listen to voters or tune them out a little bit. Look, grocery prices have not come down. Buying things from overseas has only gotten more expensive during the Trump administration. Jobless numbers are not great at all. But, even though life is arguably not better for the average American who doesn't have a lot in the stock market, somehow opinions of Democrats remain super low. Where do you think the Democratic Party is still missing the boat? Why aren't people running to them now?
I think it's leadership, leadership, leadership. It's true in cities, it's true in states, it's true in countries. And the sad truth is Democrats are lacking principled, strong, inspirational leadership. And for many years, I would argue we don't really have just two parties, which are private corporations, by the way. America kind of had four parties, and two of each congregated with one side or the other. In the Republican aisle, it was a evangelical pro-life movement working hand in hand with the business groups around the country. And Democrats have had this kind of moderate wing, and more ascendant far left, some call socialist wing, in the midst for some time. We see the direction that's heading. So right now, I think a lot of this is internal politics, the far left disappointed in moderate Democrats and vice versa. But it's also a country full of independents who saw with their own eyes President Biden's decline, wondered why nobody in Washington somehow was seeing what they were seeing. And I think that distrust is so consequential, and it will have repercussions for years. And no semblance since that moment of Joe Biden's exit from the race have the Democratic Party elevated or given platform to a new generation of leaders who I think can shine. I was calling attention to that. Everybody knows what happened to me, and I think that has a lot to do with why the party stands where it does right now: an absence of trust, absence of leadership, absence of vision, and lastly, and perhaps most importantly, what you just referenced. I haven't seen a thoughtful policy proposition from Democrats collectively in a long, long time. Prices are too high. Housing is inaffordable. Our healthcare system is not a system. It's a sick care system that so few can afford. And Democrats have got to start offering solutions. And that's the reality when push comes to shove.
Okay, we only have about a minute. I have so much to ask you, including which Democrats do you think are doing it right, maybe on the local level? And I'm going to guess you might say San Francisco Mayor Daniel Lurie, right?
Well, as some know, I have a special appreciation and a lifelong friendship with Daniel Lurie. I was his counselor at camp when, he's a little younger than I, but I'd like to take full credit for his term as mayor so far. I think Daniel Lurie is a great example of someone with the passion, the competency, the principles, and so far showing great success in San Francisco. I think Josh Shapiro, of course, in Pennsylvania, is another young star. I think Wes Moore, of course, in Maryland. And then let's not forget about people like Abigail Spanberger, my former colleague in the House, who's now running and hopefully going to become governor of Virginia, Mikey Sherrill running for governor of New Jersey. We have a talented bench of compelling candidates with great principles who I want to at least see on that platform someday soon.
All right, Dean, now I've wrestled an additional 30 seconds from my producer, but this is absolutely it. I understand you've traded the Minnesota winter for the Southern California eternal summer. What are you doing here? Are you eyeing political office here in California? What's going on?
Well, let me first say that about a third of my constituents came to the California desert, and I could never find them in winter in Minnesota, so I'm just following the herd. But the truth is, I wanted to take a gap year after my experience in Washington to reflect and, most importantly, contemplate the future. Loving my time in Southern California. My father was raised in Northern California, and I'll tell you one thing: it's really hard to sit on the sidelines when I see solvable problems that continue to afflict our cities, our states, and our country. So time will tell. I want to be supportive and helpful, and stay tuned.
Indeed, we will. Former Congressman and Democratic presidential candidate Dean Phillips, thank you so much.